Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of AACRAO's Credential Chats. We are joined this week by the Director of Digital Credentialing at Purdue Global, Jacob Askeroth. Thank you so much, Jacob, for being with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Noah. Excited to be here.
Really excited because you have a really cool title
Thanks.
of director level. And also for the AACRAO audience, you are um, reporting structure wise part of the Office of the Registrar as well. So I think that's really cool for us to talk about. And I've also just been kind of a big time fan for a minute now of a lot of the work y'all are doing that is of real interest to this community of what are the frameworks in place? What are the actual taxonomies? And at Purdue Global, you all are kind of off to the races, have already done a lot of that. So maybe just to kick us off, if you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing just, what is your role and what are some of the things that we want to share with people that you and your colleagues have created that we can go find and access and learn from.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, happy to talk about that. Yeah, so in my role, I am obviously just over all of our operations and strategies as it relates to digital credentials. And we've developed a fairly wide set of use cases of digital badges for the university. We have micro-credentials that we issue badges for, and then we also have more kind of celebratory kind of recognition badges for students who make certain GPA thresholds each term. So it's the chancellor's list and dean's list. So we issue a lot of those, and then also for our kind of internal employee trainings with select ones of those. If you complete those, we'll issue a digital badge. And so we've really tried to create and engender a culture at the University of digital credentialing. Still have quite a ways to go, I would say, but given that this is still such a new area, I think we all would say that. Um, but as far as you mentioned frameworks, what we have tried to put in place as far as structure at the university is a taxonomy that outlines what different for what different use cases or scenarios we would issue a digital badge. Um, and we kind of got started in this back in 2018, and we've had a little bit of an evolution, working with different vendors. We first started with digital diplomas, and then in about 2020 is when we first started awarding our first micro credentials. And as our use case or portfolio started expanding, we thought we really need some type of structure here that helps us make decisions about what we will and won't issue a digital badge for, as well as help us kind of define or differentiate the different types or categories, and then also how those are visually represented so that people can maybe distinguish, like, okay, well, that badge looks slightly different based on its shape, so that means it's a micro credential, and this is the deans and chancellors list. And happy to get a little bit more specific into that. But what has been helpful is the development of a digital, what I've called the digital badging handbook. Do you want me to share my screen at all, Noah?
Feel free if you feel like that'll help out, go for it.
Yeah, let me just show just a little bit of this handbook. I won't go line by line because several pages, but can you see this here?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just part of our digital badging handbook. Again, the goal here with this was to establish some frameworks and structure around, this is how we define or implement digital badging at Purdue University Global. Really kind of put them into two broad categories to start with, whether that was an achievement badge or a engagement badge. And the achievement is more on kind of like academic rigor, something that was assessed, could represent both credit and non-credit. And as I mentioned, some of the examples there would be our micro credentials or our deans and chancellors list, or some other student awards. But then engagement ones would be more along the lines of, you attended a seminar or something, and so for your attendance, we will give you a badge, or something that wasn't formally assessed but is an achievement worth recognizing. We've even included this with people who have completed a term of service on some of our governance committees, just internally. And so, hey, thanks for being on the faculty senate. Your term of service is up. Here's a digital badge that recognizes that. And then we have kind of broken it out in this in more specific taxonomy here in each badge use case where based on what the badge is for or what it is intended to represent and the metadata that would be within that, we've tried to communicate that visually by the different shapes of the badge and also try to be consistent, from a thematic standpoint of, consistent with our brand colors and logos and all of that, specifying, here's what this badge is for, here's what it's called, the type that it is, and, what the different shape would communicate for that. Anyway, so that kind of helped paint a picture or answer your question there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, I mean, there's just so much to unpack there. One thing that, at the risk of putting you on the spot, that I'm kind of curious about
Yeah,
is, you know, some of these things are, you're absolutely formal recognition that at Purdue Global has decided these are worthy of formal recognition from the university. And, I think in a lot of our offices, those recognitions might not typically live in the office of the registrar, but it sounds like at Purdue Global, there's very intentionally a sense of ownership for your shop of these are learning records, and we actually
yeah.
do want to be the ones who are issuing them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been critical to partner with colleagues of mine within the registrar's office to enable us to scale some of our badging operations to identify students who have completed the requirements for our micro-credentials or who make the deans and chancellors list. That has enabled us to to do bulk uploads and bulk issues to students. I think each year we probably issue around 50,000 badges with that. And so that has been really, critical having having this, being within the organization of the registrar's office, but also, being able to partner with other colleagues who are really good at things like databases and queries to create those reports that make it pretty seamless. We don't have the integration. It's kind of interesting because we use Canvas credentials, but we're not a Canvas LMS institution. But nonetheless, we've still been able to make some pretty efficient processes, I think.
Yeah, I love that there's other people who's just what they're good at on a day-to-day basis as
Mhm.
colleagues and those of the registrar are able to help with you and your role achieve the scale. And so for people who maybe just were like, wait a second, they're writing a report to figure out who might be eligible. Can you give us an example of that? It sounds like that's maybe a for credit offering.
Yeah, yeah, great question. So many, I would say actually the majority of our micro credentials that we offer are actually for credit, meaning that we have repurposed much of the courses in our degree programs and repackaged them as micro credentials. Good thing with that is that they automatically stack or are pathways into our degree programs because they're the courses of those. But what has been maybe a little bit more of a challenge is that students who earn those micro credentials are the students who are already pursuing a degree with us. So it's very rare for a student to say, "Oh, Purdue Global has a micro credential. I just want that." And then after getting the micro, then they matriculate into the degree program. What we see is students who are matriculated in our degree program and then inadvertently they get our micro credential. And so they have been you know, unexpecting when they haven't been expecting a digital badge or a micro credential when they earn it. And so, yeah, what we've done with the within our registrar's office is create the reports that would identify students who have satisfied the requirements for the micro credentials, and typically those tend to be 3 to 5 courses. And so we've actually tried to also be proactive in reaching out to students who may be one course away from getting the micro. So if they have one more elective that they just need to take and that would get them a certain micro credential. I've again worked with the same colleagues in the registrar's office to run a report that would identify those students. And then I just use a kind of simple mail merge tool to communicate out saying, hey, you probably didn't know this, but if you take this one remaining course, you'll get this micro credential and we'll send you a digital badge for it. And by the way, here's what a micro credential and a digital badge are and why they're cool and what you can do with it. So we've seen I think some adoption or uptake from students as a result of those kind of email campaigns.
And that sounds just so smart because I'm guessing a lot of us, like you mentioned, that before you were doing the micro credentials, you were issuing digital diplomas, right? And
Mhm.
like I'm guessing there's a lot of folks in the AACRAO community who are at campuses that do have a product like a certified electronic diploma that has a way lower acceptance rate than the physical diploma that is there to help represent. And so that this is not necessarily, I guess, in a lot of ways, a completely new problem or challenge for our offices. And it sounds like, in addition to combining different technologies beyond just the badge issuing platform, that you're also combining different business processes that are already within the wheelhouse of expertise with Office of the Registrar and
Mhm.
specifically with just communication.
Yeah, and we have found that obviously the term micro-credential is still really unfamiliar to the broader public, and so I think if it, and I think you're right in that digital diploma acceptance is not as widely accepted as a printed one, but even just the word diploma, like so we've seen higher acceptance rates on or engagement rates from our digital diplomas, even more so than our digital badges, just because I think people are more familiar with, well, yeah, I graduated, so I'm going to get a diploma. Our micro credentials pose a little bit different, challenge where it's a lot of these students had no idea this micro credential was coming, and so we've
Hmm.
been trying to help educate them and make them aware that Purdue Global has these micro credentials, and it's another milestone along the way to earning your degree, and great job, and you're going to get a badge for it. So when that comes, it's not a phishing attempt or spam. Just make sure use it to your advantage. So,
And I think that's huge, yeah, because it is with all the emails coming, especially depending on where we are in our business processes and the cycles. If it is at the end of a semester,
yeah.
for example, it can be pretty easy for that notification to get lost in the shuffle. Yeah, I do want to bring you back to, you screen shared there, you were showing the taxonomy there, and I think I guess one quick question is just I'm guessing that a lot of ACRA members kind of would look at like credential design as kind of a different sort of vertical than our offices. And it sounds like actually no, it was really important that your office be leading in this. And yes, there's probably people in strategic relations and whatnot, or whatever your campus calls the office, that are in charge of some brand assets, but that your office, actually that design is important.
Yeah, and we have iterated several times on the design. We've had a few different rebrands that we've had to go through, so that has obviously necessitated us to go through and update those. But it also has forced us to be intentional and to discuss, what do we want these to look like, so that they communicate what we think that they represent. But to your point, Noah, yeah, I think that this, rather than it being something that does not fall within the purview of a registrar's office, I think given that they are academic records, or I guess records for the student, and we do note on the transcript when someone has earned a micro credential, so they do get the badge, and then we also make note of it on their transcript as well. And so yeah, definitely it can be intimidating to think like, okay, where do we start with this whole digital badging stuff, and how do we design? So there's a lot of nebulous stuff to have to navigate through. But I would just say, the more that you can just test things out before, even maybe even before having everything figured out, like that's how we've kind of taken the approach of like, let's just try it and see what happens, and if we need to change it and fix it later, we'll do that, and we'll learn as we go.
I love that. As a mentor told me, you just get out there and dance. Like it's way
Yeah.
easier to clean up a spilled glass of punch than the whole punch bowl. So start with a glass, and you'll be fine. Yeah. In our final minute here, Jacob, I know that you, along with Eric at Georgia Tech, Javier Motamena at Arizona State, are combining on research projects specific to, this sort of visual badge identification identity and kind of uh, like branding guidelines, for lack of maybe a better word. Do you want to just real quick share with that and how people can absolutely get involved and share their own work?
Yeah, we're in the process of collecting data right now, and so a lot of you know people at universities who are over digital credentials and things like that have been invited to complete a survey that really just kind of gets at how is higher education approaching the visual design of digital badges, what type of trends are out there, and how is the metadata communicated visually based on the design of the badge. And so we're really trying to explore that, gather data. So there is a survey link that if anyone hasn't completed that, they're certainly encouraged and welcome to.
Awesome. And we'll make sure to post that when we share this in the community and the show
Yep,
notes. Jacob Askeroth, the Director of Digital Credentialing at Purdue Global. Thank you so much for joining and just sharing the
absolutely.
awesome work you're doing in such accessible ways with Credential Chats.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Noah. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And have a badge-worthy week, everybody. Thanks for
All right,
joining us.
take care, everyone. Thanks.